If you are facing a situation that feels hopeless and nothing seems to have an answer, this prayer is for you. If you are arriving now, this can become a place of prayer. You return to whenever hope feels fragile. Allow this prayer through Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of difficult and desperate causes, to reach the situation you no longer know how to solve. Here, what seems lost is entrusted, what feels impossible is placed with faith, and what has no human solution is surrendered. Hold on to this truth. No cause placed with faith remains abandoned. Even when answers delay, heaven is already moving. Now, in the comments, write with faith, Saint Jude Thaddeus, intercede for my miracle. Let this be your act of trust. Before we begin, thank you for being here. This moment was not random. Your heart was led here for a reason. Someone close to you may be facing a desperate situation right now. Share this prayer and let it reach them. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of God and patron of difficult and desperate causes, we come before you in this quiet moment, carrying a situation that feels beyond our strength. What we bring is not simple, not easily resolved, and not lightly held. It is something that has pressed on our hearts for a long time. There is a sense of impossibility here. We have tried to understand, to endure, to find solutions, and yet the path remains unclear. The weight of this situation has followed us through days and nights, shaping our thoughts and stirring emotions we do not always know how to express. We come without pretending to be confident or certain. Some of us arrive with hope that feels fragile. Others arrive with exhaustion, unsure how much longer we can carry what feels unresolved. Still, we come because even in uncertainty, something within us longs for help beyond our own limits. Saint Jude, you are known for walking with those who feel there is no way forward. You understand what it means to stand in places where hope feels thin and answers feel distant. We trust that you do not turn away from what seems impossible to us. We place this situation before you now, not with detailed explanations, but with honesty. You see what we cannot fully describe. You know how this burden has shaped our days and how deeply it touches our lives. As we begin this prayer, we ask simply to be accompanied, to not face this alone, to feel that even in difficulty, we are seen, heard, and supported by heaven's care. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain with us as this prayer unfolds. Let this opening moment become a doorway into trust, reminding us that even in the most challenging circumstances, we are not abandoned, and that miracles often begin quietly, in surrender rather than certainty. Saint Jude Thaddeus, we acknowledge now the silent weight we have been carrying. This burden has not always been spoken aloud. Often it has remained hidden behind routine, behind strength, behind the effort to continue functioning while the heart quietly struggles. There is a particular loneliness that comes with desperation. It is the feeling that others may not fully understand the depth of what we are facing, or that words fail to capture how serious this situation feels. We carry questions we cannot easily share and fears we keep carefully contained. This desperation has shaped our inner world. It has influenced how we rest, how we think, and how we hope. Even moments of calm can feel fragile when the weight remains unresolved beneath the surface. We bring this reality honestly before you. Saint Jude, you know what it means to be invoked when hope feels nearly gone. You are called upon when situations feel beyond human help, when patience has been stretched, and when strength feels limited. You do not dismiss this desperation. You meet it with compassion. We allow ourselves now to stop hiding this weight. We place it gently into your presence, without shame and without exaggeration. We do not try to make it smaller than it is. We simply acknowledge how heavy it feels. As we do this, we ask for the grace to feel less alone. Let the burden be shared, even before it is lifted. Let this moment of honesty loosen the tightness that is built up within us. Saint Jude Thaddeus, hold this silent desperation with care. Let your intercession begin here, in this place of truth, reminding us that even when hope feels distant, it has not disappeared, and that bringing the weight into the light is already the first step toward grace. Saint Jude Thaddeus, with humility and trust, we now place this impossible cause fully before God through your intercession. What we carry has reached the limits of our understanding and ability. We acknowledge that there are aspects of this situation we can no longer manage, explain, or resolve on our own. We bring this cause just as it is complicated, fragile, and unfinished. We do not dress it up with ideal words or try to make it sound acceptable. God already sees it clearly, and you, Saint Jude, understand how heavy it feels to bring forward something that seems beyond repair. There is vulnerability in this moment. To place an impossible cause before God is to admit our limits. It is to recognize that human effort, patience, and reasoning have been stretched thin, yet this vulnerability opens the door to grace rather than closing it. Saint Jude, you are trusted with causes that others hesitate to name. You understand the courage it takes to hope when outcomes feel uncertain. As we entrust this situation to you, we ask that you carry it faithfully before God, holding nothing back. We release the need to explain why this matters so deeply. We trust that both you and God already know the full weight of what is at stake. We simply remain present, allowing surrender to take the place of striving. As this cause rests before God, help us loosen our grip on fear and urgency. Let this act of entrustment calm what has been restless within us. Teach us that placing something before God does not require certainty, only honesty and trust. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as this offering is made. Let this moment mark a quiet shift within us, where desperation begins to soften, and where the first movement toward hope and miracle can begin to take shape. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as this cause now rests before God, we enter the season of waiting. This waiting has likely already been long, marked by unanswered prayers, postponed outcomes, and silence that feels heavy. We bring the pain of this delay honestly into this prayer. Waiting wears on the heart in quiet ways. It tests patience, weakens confidence, and invites doubt to whisper that nothing is happening. Each passing day can feel like another reminder of what has not yet changed, and hope can feel stretched thin by time. There are moments when waiting feels more exhausting than action. We replay conversations, reconsider decisions, and wonder if we missed something or did something wrong. The delay can make us question ourselves, our faith, and even our worthiness to ask for help. Saint Jude, you know this kind of waiting well. You are invoked precisely when time has passed and answers have not arrived. You understand how delay can deepen desperation and how silence can feel louder than words. We place the weight of this waiting into your care now. We ask not for impatience to be rewarded, but for endurance to be softened by trust. Help us understand that delay is not abandonment, and that God's timing carries wisdom beyond what we can see. As we remain here, teach us how to wait without hardening. Help us resist bitterness and despair. Let waiting become a place where faith is refined rather than diminished. Saint Jude Thaddeus, stay close to us in this prolonged waiting. Let your presence remind us that even in delay, heaven is attentive, and that what feels slow to us is not forgotten by God. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as waiting continues, we become aware of how fear quietly takes root within us. It does not always appear dramatically. Often it arrives as unease, as racing thoughts, as a constant inner tension that never fully rests. We bring this fear into the light of this prayer. Fear tells us stories about what might happen if nothing changes. Anxiety imagines outcomes we cannot control and prepares us for pain before it arrives. Even when we try to remain calm, these thoughts return, tightening our hearts and draining our peace. We notice how fear can feel responsible, as if worrying were a form of protection. We tell ourselves that staying alert will somehow prevent loss or disappointment. Yet this vigilance exhausts us, leaving little room for trust or rest. Saint Jude, you see how fear shapes our inner world. You know how anxiety pulls us away from the present moment and traps us in imagined futures. In your presence, we do not need to pretend we are braver than we feel. We gently place these fears before you now, the ones we can name, and the ones that remain vague but heavy. We do not argue with them or try to silence them by force. We simply offer them, trusting that being seen is already a form of healing. Ask God to replace what fear has tightened with a deeper sense of safety. Let calm begin to take root where anxiety once ruled. Teach us that releasing fear is not carelessness, but an act of trust in divine care. Saint Jude Thaddeus, help us loosen the grip of fear on our hearts. As anxiety softens, prepare us to move forward with greater peace, knowing that this release is not the end of the struggle, but a necessary step toward hope and miracle. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as fear begins to loosen, we become aware of how fragile our faith can feel in moments like this. We want to believe with confidence, yet doubt lingers quietly. Hope is still present, but it feels delicate, easily shaken by long waiting and unanswered questions. There are days when trusting God feels natural, and others when it feels like effort. We may wonder if our faith is strong enough, or if our prayers are somehow lacking. These thoughts can leave us feeling uncertain, even ashamed, for not believing more boldly. Saint Jude, you know the hearts of those who come to you. You understand that faith is not always firm or fearless. You stand with those whose hope trembles, whose trust wavers, and whose belief feels more like a quiet reaching than a confident declaration. We bring this fragile faith before you now. We do not hide our doubts or pretend certainty we do not feel. We offer our questions, our hesitation, and our fear of disappointment. We trust that honesty does not weaken faith, it deepens it. Remind us that faith does not need to be perfect to be real. Even a small, trembling hope still turns toward God. Our trust does not rest on how strongly we believe, but on how faithful God remains. Ask God to gently strengthen what feels thin within us, not by pressure and not by force, but by reassurance and presence. Let faith grow quietly, rooted in experience rather than expectation. Saint Jude Thaddeus, hold our fragile hope with care. Let it rest safely in your intercession. As this phase unfolds, may we discover that even weak faith, when offered sincerely, is enough for grace to move and for miracles to begin taking shape. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as faith remains fragile and hope feels thin, we notice how strongly we try to hold on to control. Even while praying, there is a part of us that wants to manage how this situation unfolds. We imagine outcomes, timelines, and solutions, believing that control might protect us from pain. This need to control often comes from fear rather than trust. We feel that if we stay alert, if we think enough, if we prepare for every possibility, we can somehow prevent disappointment. Yet this effort leaves us tense and weary, unable to rest, even in prayer. We recognize how control tightens our hearts. It keeps us focused on what must change instead of who walks with us. The more tightly we hold on, the more difficult it becomes to receive peace. We acknowledge this honestly, without self-judgment. Saint Jude, you invite us into a different posture, one of surrender rather than management. You remind us that letting go is not giving up, it is placing our trust where it truly belongs. It is choosing faith over fear, even when outcomes remain unclear. We begin now to release our expectations. The way we think this miracle should happen, the timing we secretly hope for, the conditions we believe must be met. We loosen our grip, allowing God to work beyond our limited vision. As we let go, we notice a subtle lightness within us. Where tension once lived, space begins to open. This space is not emptiness, it is room for grace, for trust, for divine movement we cannot yet see. Saint Jude Thaddeus, help us remain faithful in this surrender. Teach us that releasing control does not lead to loss, but to deeper freedom. As we let go of what we cannot manage, lead us gently toward peace and toward the miracle God is preparing in His perfect time. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as control loosens and surrender deepens, we begin to notice something unexpected, a quiet peace settling within us. The situation may remain unchanged, the problem may still be present, and yet something inside begins to soften. This peace does not come with excitement or certainty. It does not announce itself loudly or remove every concern. It arrives gently, like calm after long tension, reminding us that even before the miracle appears, God's presence is already near. We are sometimes surprised by this peace. We expected calm to come only after answers arrived, after circumstances shifted, after relief was visible. Yet here it is, meeting us in uncertainty, teaching us that peace is not a reward for resolution, but a gift given in the waiting. Saint Jude, help us trust this peace rather than question it. Teach us not to fear calm, simply because the problem remains. Let us understand that peace is not denial, but grace offered to steady the heart while God continues his work unseen. We allow this peace to settle more deeply now. We stop scanning for signs and stop rehearsing worries. We give ourselves permission to rest, even briefly, without guilt or suspicion. Protect this peace from impatience and doubt. Guard it from the voice that says we must stay tense to stay faithful. Remind us that peace does not weaken our prayer, it strengthens it. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as this peace takes root. Let it prepare our hearts for whatever comes next. May it be a quiet assurance that even before the miracle unfolds, we are already being held, guided, and cared for by God. Saint Jude Thaddeus, we now stand in a place that asks much of our hearts. To trust God even when nothing appears to be changing. The peace has come, yet the situation remains. The prayer has been offered, yet the outcome is still unseen. This is where trust becomes quieter and more mature. We notice how naturally we look for signs. We want reassurance that progress is being made, that something is shifting, that our surrender has meaning. When no evidence appears, doubt gently returns, questioning whether trust is reasonable without confirmation. Saint Jude, you remind us that God's work is not limited to what we can observe. Much of what matters most happens slowly, beneath the surface, beyond our awareness. What feels like stillness to us may be deep preparation in God's hands. This phase can feel uncomfortable and stretching. Trust without visible change requires patience and humility. It asks us to rest in God's character rather than in outcomes. This kind of trust reshapes our faith from something reactive into something rooted. Help us resist the temptation to reclaim control or reopen fear when uncertainty lingers. Teach us how to remain open rather than guarded, hopeful rather than resigned. Let our trust remain steady, even when our emotions fluctuate. We choose now to trust again, not with forced confidence, but with honest willingness. We stay present, even when answers delay, believing that silence does not mean absence, and waiting does not mean neglect. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain with us in this unseen work. Let our trust deepen quietly, anchored not in what we can see, but in the faithfulness of God who never abandons his children and never forgets the prayers placed before him. Saint Jude Thaddeus, even as the situation remains unresolved, we are invited into a posture that feels unexpected gratitude. Not gratitude because everything is clear or easy, but gratitude because God has remained present with us through every stage of this journey. We begin to notice quiet signs of grace that were easy to overlook before. The strength to endure another day, the peace that arrived without explanation. The moments when despair did not overcome us, even when circumstances felt heavy. These are not small gifts. They are evidence of God's care. Gratitude changes how we wait. It softens the heart and loosens the grip of resentment. It reminds us that God's goodness is not delayed until the miracle arrives, but is already woven into the present moment. Even waiting itself is held by grace. Saint Jude, help us cultivate this gratitude without denying our longing. We do not pretend that the situation no longer matters. Instead, we learn to hold hope and thankfulness together, trusting that both can coexist within the same heart. We thank God now for what has already been given, the patience that has grown, the fear that has softened, the trust that has quietly deepened. These gifts may not have been requested directly, yet they have sustained us. Let gratitude protect our hearts from bitterness and despair. When impatience rises, remind us of how far we have come. When discouragement whispers, let thankfulness speak more gently but more truthfully. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as gratitude takes root within us. May it become a steady companion during this waiting, reminding us that even before the miracle becomes visible, God's presence is already active, faithful, and near. Saint Jude Thaddeus. Having placed this impossible cause before God, we now turn our attention to the future that still feels uncertain. So much of our inattention comes from what has not yet happened, questions without answers, paths not yet revealed, and outcomes we cannot predict. We bring this future into prayer with humility. We recognize how often our minds travel ahead, imagining scenarios that may never come. We prepare ourselves for disappointment, for change, for loss, believing that anticipation might protect us. Yet this constant reaching into the future pulls us away from the grace available in the present. Saint Jude, you remind us that the future is not empty or unguarded. God already stands within what lies ahead. Nothing will arrive unexpectedly to him, and nothing will be faced without his presence. Remembering this gently loosens our fear of tomorrow. We release our imagined futures now, the timelines we secretly hope for, the outcomes we try to control, the expectations we place on ourselves and others. We let go of the belief that we must see the whole road in order to feel safe. Teach us to entrust the future one step at a time, not demanding clarity all at once, but trusting that guidance and strength will be given when they are needed. Let our confidence rest not in knowing what comes next, but in knowing who walks with us. As we place the future in God's hands, give us freedom to remain grounded here and now. Help us live this moment fully, without being pulled forward by fear or backward by regret. Saint Jude Thaddeus, carry this entrustment before God. Let it bring calm to our thoughts and lightness to our hearts. May we rest in the assurance that whatever the future holds, it will arrive wrapped in divine care and faithful love. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as this prayer continues, we become aware that faith does not remain only within these words. True trust carries forward into silence, into daily life, and into moments when we are no longer actively praying. We bring this awareness gently before God. There is often a quiet vulnerability after prayer. We return to familiar routines, responsibilities, and unresolved circumstances. The same situation remains, and it can feel as though the sacred moment fades. Yet faith is not sustained by emotion alone, but by the decision to remain open and trusting. Saint Jude, help us understand that faith after prayer becomes quieter and more rooted. It shows itself in patience rather than urgency, in restraint rather than reaction, and in the choice to trust again when uncertainty resurfaces. This kind of faith grows slowly but deeply. We ask for the grace to remember this prayer when fear returns. When we are tempted to reclaim control or reopen old worries, gently remind us of the surrender we made here. Let this memory steady us rather than burden us. Teach us that faith does not require constant reassurance. It matures through consistency, through returning again and again to trust, even when feelings fluctuate and answers delay. Let our faith rest in God's faithfulness rather than in our own strength. As we move beyond this moment of prayer, help us carry its spirit with us. Let it shape how we respond, how we wait, and how we treat ourselves and others. May faith guide not only our words, but our actions and reactions as well. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain with us beyond this prayer. Let faith continue its quiet work within us, steady and enduring, knowing that even in silence and waiting, God remains attentive and close. Saint Jude Thaddeus, at this point in the prayer, we allow ourselves to rest more deeply in God's care. Not resting because everything is resolved, and not because the struggle is ended, but resting because we trust that we are being held even now. This rest is a quiet decision to stop carrying what has already been surrendered. So much of our fatigue comes from remaining alert, watchful, and tense. Even hope can become exhausting when it is mixed with pressure. In this moment, we release the need to stay vigilant. We allow our hearts to soften, trusting that God does not need our constant effort in order to work. This kind of rest may feel unfamiliar. Our minds want to stay active, prepared, and guarded. Yet God invites us into a rest that does not depend on outcomes. A rest that exists even while questions remain unanswered and circumstances unchanged. Saint Jude, help us trust that nothing will fall apart if we pause. Remind us that while we rest, God remains fully attentive. His care does not weaken when we grow quiet. His presence does not fade when we stop striving. We place our whole selves into this rest now, our thoughts, our emotions, our unanswered prayers. We do not revisit the details. We do not reopen the struggle. We simply remain, trusting that this resting is not avoidance, but faith in its most peaceful form. As we rest, let God's peace reach deeper places within us, places that have stayed tense out of habit or fear. Let calm settle where anxiety once lived, without forcing anything to change. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as we rest in this way. Let this deep surrender mark a turning point within us, where trust becomes quiet, steady, and enduring, secure in the knowledge that we are fully cared for by God. Saint Jude Thaddeus, even after moments of rest and surrender, discouragement sometimes finds its way back into our hearts. It does not always arrive suddenly or loudly. Often it returns quietly, through a thought, a memory, or the feeling that too much time has passed without change. This discouragement can feel heavier precisely because we have prayed sincerely. We may wonder why hope still feels fragile, or why the situation remains unresolved despite our trust. Discouragement whispers that perhaps we expected too much, or that waiting has gone on longer than we can endure. We acknowledge this discouragement honestly. We do not treat it as failure, nor as a sign that our faith has disappeared. We recognize it as part of the journey of trusting God in difficult circumstances. Even faithful hearts can feel discouraged when answers delay. Saint Jude, you understand this struggle deeply. You are invoked by those who have reached the limits of patience and strength. You know how discouragement can drain motivation and quietly invite resignation rather than hope. We bring this discouragement into your presence now. We name it gently, without letting it define us. We resist the urge to judge ourselves for feeling it. Instead, we allow it to be seen and held with compassion. Help us remember what God has already given, the peace that arrived unexpectedly, the strength that carried us through moments we thought we could not face. Let discouragement not erase the growth that has taken place within us during this waiting. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain with us when discouragement passes through. Teach us how to meet it without panic and without surrendering hope. Let it become an invitation to deeper trust, reminding us that even when hope feels thin, God's faithfulness remains steady and near. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as this journey continues, we acknowledge the tiredness that has settled within us. Not only physical fatigue, but the deeper weariness that comes from carrying uncertainty, waiting through silence, and hoping through difficulty. We bring this tired heart and weary spirit into prayer without hiding it. There are moments when our strength feels thin. Even simple tasks can feel heavy, and prayer itself can feel quieter, less expressive. This weariness does not mean we have lost faith. It means we have been faithful for a long time, carrying what has not yet been resolved. We notice how easily we judge ourselves for feeling tired. We tell ourselves we should be stronger, more patient, more resilient. Yet beneath these expectations is a longing for gentleness, for permission to rest without guilt or fear of failing. Saint Jude, you see how long we have endured. You see the effort it has taken to remain open, to continue trusting, to keep returning to prayer, even when answers delay. You do not measure us by endurance alone, but by sincerity of heart. We offer this weariness to you now, the heaviness in our bodies, the dull ache in our spirits, the quiet longing for relief. We do not ask to be rushed into strength. We ask to be met where we are. Help us understand that tiredness is not a weakness to be corrected, but a signal that care is needed. Teach us to treat ourselves with compassion rather than pressure, trusting that rest is part of God's design, not a failure of faith. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as we acknowledge this weariness. Restore us gently, without urgency. Let strength return slowly, carried by grace rather than force, as God continues his quiet and faithful work within us. Saint Jude Thaddeus. As time continues and the situation remains unresolved, we ask for the grace to wait without losing the peace that God has placed within us. Waiting can slowly wear down calm if we are not attentive, allowing restlessness and tension to creep back into the heart. We notice how impatience often returns quietly, not as frustration, but as subtle unease, a feeling that we should be doing more, thinking more, or pushing forward somehow. Even peaceful hearts can feel unsettled when waiting stretches beyond what feels reasonable. Saint Jude, you remind us that peace does not depend on outcomes. True peace is rooted in trust, not in resolution. It can remain steady even while questions linger and uncertainty continues. This peace does not deny difficulty, it coexists with it. Help us recognize when our thoughts begin pulling us away from the present moment. When our minds rush ahead or dwell on what has not yet changed, gently guide us back. Teach us to remain where grace is always available here and now. We ask for a waiting that is spacious rather than tight. A waiting that allows breathing room, that does not rush time or resist reality. Let this waiting become a place of quiet growth rather than inner strain. Protect our peace from becoming conditional. Remind us that peace is not something we must defend through effort, but something we receive through trust. Let it remain even when emotions fluctuate and hope feels fragile. Saint Jude Thaddeus, stay close as we continue to wait. May this season teach us how to hold hope gently, how to live fully without rushing the future, and how to trust that God's work continues faithfully even when the path ahead remains unseen. Saint Jude Thaddeus, we come once more to place this same cause before God through your intercession, not because it was forgotten, and not because our first offering was incomplete, but because trust often returns again and again. This renewed offering carries less urgency and more surrender. What we bring now is shaped by time, by patience that has been tested, by faith that has matured, and by a deeper awareness of our limits. We do not arrive with the same intensity as before. Instead, there is a quieter confidence that God already knows and already holds what concerns us. We notice that something within us has changed, even if the situation itself has not. Our expectations may be softer, our grip may be looser, our hearts may be more open to outcomes we did not originally imagine. We offer these changes along with what still remains unresolved. Saint Jude, receive this second offering gently. You are not wearied by our returning. You understand that surrender is not a single act, but a practice that deepens over time. Each return is not failure, it is faith choosing to stay engaged. We release again the need to explain or justify this cause. We trust that God sees its full weight and its deepest implications. We stop negotiating outcomes and simply remain present, allowing trust to replace effort. As we offer this cause again, help us feel the freedom of not carrying it alone. Let this repetition become a sign of perseverance rather than doubt, of commitment rather than fear. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as this renewed surrender settles. Continue to intercede faithfully, guiding our hearts into deeper peace and steady trust, knowing that every sincere offering draws us closer to God's will and closer to the miracle prepared in His time. Saint Jude Thaddeus, as we continue walking this path of trust and surrender, we now ask for light. Not full explanations, not every answer at once, but enough clarity to take the next step without fear. When the road feels uncertain, even a small light can steady the heart. There are moments when confusion returns quietly. We wonder how to act, what to say, or when to remain still. Decisions still need to be made, responsibilities still call, and yet clarity feels incomplete. We bring this uncertainty honestly into prayer. Saint Jude, you know how easily confusion can drain our strength. When the way forward feels unclear, hesitation and doubt can settle in. You remind us that guidance often comes gradually, and that we are not required to see the entire path in order to walk faithfully. We ask you to intercede for us now. Ask God to illuminate what truly matters and to quiet what only distracts or overwhelms us. Help us discern which thoughts lead toward peace and which lead toward fear or pressure. Along with light, we ask for strength, not the kind that forces progress, but the steady strength that sustains us day by day. Give us patience when answers are slow, courage when decisions feel heavy, and calm when emotions rise unexpectedly. Teach us to trust that strength will be given when it is needed, not all at once. Let us rely on grace that meets us in the present moment rather than demanding certainty about the future. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as we seek light and strength. Let this prayer deepen our confidence that we are being guided, supported, and upheld even when the road ahead remains only partially revealed. Saint Jude Thaddeus, in this quiet moment, we allow ourselves to rest in God's mercy. Not a mercy we must earn through endurance or perfect faith, but a mercy that meets us exactly as we are. We release the need to measure our progress and simply allow ourselves to be held. God's mercy reaches us, even in our uncertainty. It covers the moments when we doubted, when we grew tired, and when hope felt distant. Nothing we have felt or struggled with has placed us outside His compassion. Mercy does not withdraw when faith feels fragile, it draws closer. We notice how often we judge ourselves harshly. We question whether we have waited well enough, trusted deeply enough, or prayed correctly. In God's mercy, these judgments soften. Pressure gives way to gentleness, and striving gives way to rest. Saint Jude, you lead us into this mercy as a place of safety. You remind us that mercy is not only forgiveness for the past, but tenderness for the present moment. It is God's way of reassuring us that we are still loved, still seen, still cared for. We allow mercy to reach the places within us that remain sensitive, the disappointments that still ache, the fears that have not fully left, the weariness that lingers. We do not rush this healing. We trust mercy to move at its own pace. As we rest here, let mercy quiet our inner resistance. Let it remind us that we do not need to prove our faith to be worthy of care. God's mercy is already surrounding us, steady and faithful. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain close as we rest in this mercy. Let it become the ground beneath our trust, assuring us that even in waiting and uncertainty, we are fully embraced by God's unfailing love. Saint Jude Thaddeus, resting in God's mercy, we arrive once more at a quiet but meaningful choice, the choice of faith. Not a faith born of certainty, and not a confidence based on visible change, but a gentle decision to trust again, even here. This choice is not dramatic, it is subtle and interior. We choose faith not because every doubt has disappeared, but because we have experienced God's presence through every stage of this journey. Even when answers delayed, we were not abandoned. We recognize that faith is often renewed many times along the way. Each renewal is softer, less urgent, and more mature than the last. It does not need to prove itself. It simply returns, choosing relationship over control. Saint Jude, you remind us that faith is not a single moment of courage, but a series of quiet yeses. Yes, when waiting continues. Yes, when hope feels thin. Yes, when trust must be chosen without reassurance. We choose faith now without forcing emotion or certainty. We do not promise to never doubt again. We promise only to return to prayer, to surrender, to trust whenever fear or discouragement arises. Let this renewed faith settle gently within us. Let it be calm rather than anxious, steady rather than strained. Free us from the need to constantly evaluate our spiritual state. Saint Jude Thaddeus, strengthen this quiet choice of faith. Let it anchor us not in outcomes, but in God's unwavering love, which remains faithful long after our own strength feels limited. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor and companion in difficult causes, we come now to this final act of entrustment. After all that has been spoken, felt, surrendered, and renewed, we place everything fully into God's hands through you, without conditions, without urgency, and without fear. This entrustment is quieter than the first. It carries less desperation and more peace. It is shaped by the journey we have walked through honesty, waiting, discouragement, rest, and renewed faith. We no longer cling tightly to outcomes. We rest in trust. We entrust to God what still feels impossible, what remains unresolved, what may take time. we also entrust what has changed within us, the growth we did not notice at first, the strength that developed slowly, the peace that arrived before answers. Saint Jude, we trust you with what we cannot carry forward. We release the need to revisit every detail, to reopen every question, or to measure progress. What has been offered now belongs fully to God's care. We place before God our past with its unfinished moments, our present with its uncertainties, and our future with paths we cannot yet see. Nothing is held back because nothing is safer anywhere else. Remain close to us, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as this entrustment settles into our lives. Let it bring lightness to our hearts and freedom to our spirits. May we walk forward knowing that nothing we have given is ever lost, and that every sincere surrender is held with perfect love. God of mercy and faithfulness, we come now to the gentle close of this prayer, not with demands and not with urgency, but with peace. We thank you for meeting us in this quiet space, for listening without interruption, and for holding every word spoken and every feeling left unspoken. As this prayer ends, we trust that your work does not. What has been entrusted continues to be held. What has been surrendered continues to unfold, according to your wisdom and timing. We do not need to carry it forward with effort or fear. Saint Jude Thaddeus, remain near to us. When doubt returns, remind us of trust. When waiting feels long, remind us of peace. When hope feels fragile, remind us that miracles often begin in silence and unfold slowly in grace. Help us move forward gently without rushing ahead and without clinging to what has passed. Let faith guide our responses, patience shape our waiting, and peace guard our hearts. We place ourselves fully in God's care, mind, body, heart, and soul. Whatever comes next, we choose to walk forward without fear, knowing we are not alone, never forgotten, and always held. And so we rest. We trust. We remain in hope. Amen. If this prayer brought comfort, courage, or renewed hope, share it so others who feel desperate may also find light. If this has become a place you wish to return to in prayer, subscribe to the channel and continue walking with us in faith and perseverance. Leave your intentions in the comments and trust that Saint Jude Thaddeus is already interceding for causes that seem impossible. May hope rise where despair once lived, and may your miracle unfold. In God's perfect time,